My name is Dr. Cortina Peters-Louis, and I am a clinical sexologist. I have a PhD in clinical sexology. I am also a licensed mental health counselor, a licensed professional counselor, and a certified sexuality educator. So I am licensed in 4 states to provide clinical therapy and counseling. And that's what I do. I am a sex therapist and I specialize in desire discrepancy amongst partners. And I also work in the realm of racism related trauma and stressors.
Wow, incredible. What would you say you spend most of your time doing if there's one thing in particular?
I spend most of my time working with individuals who are trying to navigate their belief systems around sex versus what their wants, needs, and desires are. So, oftentimes that shows up as a lot of incongruence in the way that they view themselves in their mind versus the way they actually come across with their partners. And that can be very distressing for a lot of people. It can also cause a lot of disconnect within romantic relationships. And so helping individuals to navigate these differences and these nuances and to have the confidence to be able to move forward with the way that they view themselves and the way that they want to be is something that I absolutely enjoy doing. It's like seeing the light bulb go off in their minds, like, I don't have to have the shame related to this thing that I really want to do. I can dispel the myths that I've had about said behavior, regardless of what it is, because I'm talking through it and I'm realizing some of the barriers that prevent me from being able to do what I want to do sexually. I'm now able to do it because there's no more stigma, shame associated with it.
Well, that's really beautiful and meaningful work that you're going in there and helping people. It sounds like almost just in some ways giving them permission to be their true selves because our sexuality is a huge part of who we are. But as you know, probably better than anyone, we have societal and collective stories around what's
Mhm.
acceptable and what's not. And what's acceptable and what's not is there's not a lot of flexibility in there. um,
No, it's not.
but people are unique. And so, you know, it's interesting that you say that because I've also interviewed, I mean, hundreds at this point, members from Live Jasmine. And one of the things that they tell me that they're getting out of the service is the fact that they're just able to talk about their fantasies. They're able to talk about sex in a place and in a way where there's no problem, there's no judgment, and it's accepted.
Mhm.
Obviously many members on Live Jasmine are men or identify as men. And when you look at society at large, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of places that men feel comfortable or safe enough to go and explore or talk about their sex lives or talk about sex at all.
I would have to agree. And it's very sad that some men or a lot of men feel as though they have to hide from their partners about some of the things that they are really into because the lack of acceptance, the lack of empathy, the lack of compassion for all sexual experiences. And so when you have that shame and it's like, oh my gosh, my partner is going to look at me as if I'm weird or as if I'm not enough or as if I am gay or whatever because I enjoy this sexual act or I enjoy discussing and talking about how I enjoy this. I prefer to go to someone where I won't feel judged. And so then that causes a rift in between this person who I'm supposed to be able to trust, share, be vulnerable with. I end up being able to be more vulnerable with a stranger who's on the other side of the camera. And I feel more acceptance and positive regard from a stranger than I do the person I lay next to every night. So I think Um, Jasmine is doing something great for individuals who need that type of outlet, for individuals who don't have the support to be able to talk about and explore all of the other different sexual acts that they might be into, and have someone on the other end who's willing to listen, share, have a conversation, and just create a safe space for them to be able to speak about what they're into.
It's really interesting because, I mean, the members I've interviewed have said exactly that essentially. Some
Mhm.
of them they have expressed a certain fantasy or desire to their partner and it has been shot down. Others are simply too afraid to even try to tell them, but they still have that need. And I did have a member tell me though, because he had a positive experience with a model on Jasmine, he then felt more confident to try it out, to just kind of try and go there with his partner. So, definitely from what I've heard from the members, it's exactly what you just said, which is that they are either scared to go there with their partner or they've been shut down already.
Yeah. I may want to do this, but my partner does not. So, because my partner does not want to do it, there's no space within my relationship dynamic where I'm able to do this. Now, sometimes when I'm working with patients, it might be a little bit different if they are in a different type of relationship dynamic where maybe my nesting partner might not be open to this, but my other partners are open to this. So I get the opportunity to explore a little bit more. But when I'm working with individuals who practice monogamy, that's where I see a lot of the challenges and a lot more of the incongruence with what I want to do versus what I do. Another thing would be I myself might be afraid to explore what I'm really into because of these belief systems that I'm holding on to. And I feel dirty. I feel ashamed. I feel embarrassed. I feel like I should not want to have these urges or these desires that I have. And so I feel it, but I don't even give that any credence because I don't want to go down the slippery slope because I don't know where I would end up. So, creating a space and a place where individuals can explore safely some of the fantasies that they're having, some of the sexual interactions that they might want to experience or explore. That's what I enjoy creating because we talk about these things. Why are you afraid to go here and say this and be open about what you really want? And for some, it takes a little bit longer because you have to work through some of the religious, stuff that's there. You have to work through some of the family stuff that's there. You have to work through some of the societal stuff that's there. But once they're able to break through all of those barriers, it's amazing how pleasurable experiences can be. And all of these experiences are not even penetrative, right? It might be I enjoy voyeurism, but I'm afraid, so I don't want to say it. Or I enjoy voyeurism by way of porn or by way of whatever, but because it's so demonized, or I demonized it, or I in the way that I was raised, or my religion, and all of these things, it's like, oh my gosh, now I feel like I'm free. There is no incongruence and disconnect anymore because I've worked through those barriers that prevented me from really being able to be myself. Now, coming back to where it's the partner who does not want to be a part of that, that's a whole nother topic that sometimes can be very challenging because it's also working with the other individual to say it's not just you in this relationship, but can we explore why you might not be open to your partner wanting to explore something different?
In your patients that you've seen that were able to finally just really explore themselves sexually and give themselves permission to be truly themselves, I think you used
Mhm.
the word be free.
Yeah,
Were there other aspects of their life that profited from that?
absolutely. People pleasing, being free to just be able to move forward with what you want without the fear of judgment, without the fear that someone's going to stigmatize what I'm doing, without someone or without me feeling like I'm going to be, this is wrong. You cannot do this. You're going to get in trouble. I'm going to be damned to hell. Like all of those things. It's like, this is a whole new world out here. Like I can be confident in making decisions in life and not guiding my life through fear. It's almost like shedding the shame indirectly allows people to not live a life full of fear. What if this? I'm afraid if this happens. What if they say this about me? What if they don't like me? What if my wife gets mad? What if my husband gets mad? What if my partner gets mad? It doesn't matter because now I'm able to be confident in using my voice. Because our sexual expression is also a part of who we are. And if I can't use my voice to express my wants, needs, and desires, I'm stifled. I'm stuck. And so it can shadow other aspects of my life where I'm like, okay, I really don't want to do that, but I'll do it. I mean, I guess. Oh, or I have to be this way because they're going to be mad at me. But once I start to be fully sexually liberated and confident in that space, it's almost like the film has been pulled over the eye. It is, you are now free to live life and experience pleasure.
Members are paying by the minute to
Mm-hmm.
engage with someone. And sexual content is free online. That is very much so free.
You can get it.
Free.com. Okay. So, my question to you is, because my hypothesis is that members aren't just there for sexual content, or they would get that for free.
Mm-hmm.
They're there for something deeper, in my opinion. I'm curious your thoughts on that and what you think that might be.
Absolutely. I think they're there for numerous reasons, right? You can go on any website and get content, porn, whatever, it doesn't matter. But I think because for some of the individuals that I work with who have social anxiety, camming provides a layer of protection. I can possibly be someone other than myself and get what I need. I can have partial anonymity, but I'm controlling the environment. I am able to practice, okay, how do I want to be able to do this in the regular world, but I don't feel like it's safe. Or maybe I am selective in the type of interactions that I'm having with individuals. And I get to a place because I've been practicing and I'm watching and I'm having these conversations with the models, and it's helping me boost my confidence. So I feel good when I'm walking away from sessions because my ego has just been boosted, which when my ego is boosted, now I have confidence to go out into the world and possibly do something that I would not have had the confidence to do previously. I think it also works with individuals who are kind of testing the waters. Am I going to have a positive experience if I share this? Am I going to be accepted? Because maybe in my regular life, I'm not as accepted for who I am as when I am in a session with a model and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can totally unfiltered, unadulterated, be myself. And I'm not judged. I'm not shamed. I don't feel bad. It's not a negative experience. And if I'm going to continue to get that, guess what? Ching, ching, ching. I'm going to pay to get that reassurance. I'm going to pay to have those feelings. So, absolutely, it is much larger than the sexual component that comes with it.
Absolutely. I mean, because the things you touched on are very deep needs, very deep,
Absolutely.
deep needs. And so if someone is not able to meet those needs in their day-to-day regular life, a need that deep, I think anyone would pay if they could for those needs to be met, if you need them to be met. No matter what it is, it could be anything,
Absolutely.
I'm sure there's some people who are like, have a session with you and they're like, "Can I have another session? Do you have more time this week? Do you," because maybe,
Absolutely.
right? Because maybe you're giving them some type of reassurance, or showing them a side of themselves that they helping them see a side of themselves they haven't normally, that makes them feel so good or healed or whatever the case is. And so they're having these needs be met. People can do it with anything, but I just wanted to give the example that we as human beings do it all the time, whether it's some type of sexual exchange or not. We are constantly having transactions to get our needs met.
Mhm.
And I think
Mhm.
actually sometimes the most
Mhm.
dangerous transactions where we're trying to get our needs met are the ones that do not involve money because they're not clear. So when you're using someone for something to get a need met,
Mhm.
but they may not be on the same level or wanting to give that, that is actually, I think, potentially more dangerous in the sense of hurt or risk or whatever the case is, as opposed to seeing a cam model or a therapist or whatever the case,
Mhm.
where the relationship guidelines and boundaries are
Are clear.
there's no mystery.
You said something about transactions, right? I think every connection we make is transactional. We get something positive or we get something negative from it. So when we're getting something, we're receiving, we're giving something. It might be information, it might be time, it might be love, it might be sex, it might be whatever. We take something from that. So all of everything is transactional. And a lot of times when people hear transactional, they think money. But no, it's just something in exchange for something else. You might be giving me your love for my love or your time, and it causes my endorphins and my dopamine to go crazy because it's like, oh my God, this feels good. So I want to do more of this. It's transactional. And we cannot trivialize the importance of human connection. It is the foundation of our existence. And so when we talk about like skin hunger and I am touch starved, you can even be interactionally starved where I haven't had any interaction. Like there's a new resurgence of COVID, right? I don't know if we're going to go back on lockdown, but one of the things that happens with, Jasmin Live is I'm able to still have that human connection and be safe. I'm not exposing myself to COVID. I'm still able to have the conversations that I think are important. Human connection and interaction can happen over web, as we've seen, right? It doesn't necessarily mean I'm next to the person or I'm having in person, face to face contact with this person, but it also feeds the emotional and the social and the psychological interaction and the sense of belonging because I feel like I belong to a community. We're sharing experiences because the models are sharing, I'm feeling confident, I'm feeling okay. There's a connection and it's adding value to my life. That's why members continue to do it. And so those are some of the things that are a byproduct of being able to connect virtually.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think about it sometimes when I look at the numbers that this industry, the camming industry, or even something like OnlyFans, the numbers that are being
Yes.
raked in, this is billions and billions and billions of dollars. To me, that just speaks of the need that people are having to connect in an intimate way. And this is something else that I find really interesting. I've interviewed members that joined Jasmin a few months after Jasmin got started, which was 20 years
Okay.
ago. I'm thinking of one member in particular, but he still sees the same model. She's still on and off the site.
Really?
Seen her, she wasn't there 20 years ago, but she joined about 5 years later, so he's been seeing her for 15 years.
That's a connection.
15 years. And by the way, he's engaged. He has a business. He's like, he does his own life. He's not
Mhm,
glued to
mhm.
the computer, but he probably talks to her at least once a week.
Okay.
15 years later, and there's a lot of connections that are lasting 10 years, several years. And so I was wondering, is it because they're talking about things that are so sensitive and so vulnerable that it just opens up this level of safety with that person, where you all of a sudden, now it's like you don't have very many people in your life where you have that level of vulnerability, safety, and connection, and it
Right.
forms a lifelong bond because in many cases the models share their personal stories and concerns and lives with the members too, and there's a mutually supportive
Mhm.
relationship. And so, and I actually interviewed the model that has been seeing that member for 15 years, and when I talked about him, she was almost to tears because she's seen so many stages of his life, and
Mm.
they've held each other's hand through so many stages. I'm curious what your thoughts are on if having such vulnerable communication helps to create this deep and lasting bond with even a stranger.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that it does is it creates a sense of belonging. I've shared my identity with this person, and we're sharing things. It's reciprocal. They give me a little bit about their lives, however comfortable, however much they want to give. And I feel confident and comfortable enough that every time we're camming, there's a cam session, I'm sharing a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And it's almost as if this person knows so much about me, I'm going to pay them the same way I would pay a therapist to come have this conversation, this interaction, because I know it's confidential. I know it's not going to go anywhere. And I can release. It's a stress reduction type of technique also. It's the act of sharing concerns and receiving understanding, understanding a neutral, non-judgmental environment where someone sees me not as a dad, not as a husband, not as a fiance, but just as a person who's talking to them with this issue, that issue, or this challenge, or whatever it is that they're struggling with or might have challenges with, and getting a honest answer. And in that moment, I don't even think that they're worried about per minute or how much they're paying. It's this is fulfilling for me in a way that maybe I am not fulfilled in other areas of my life. I'm getting validation. I'm being affirmed. This is leading to a improved sense of self-worth for myself that I don't get outside of these cam sessions. So yeah, why wouldn't I continue to pay for 15 years to get something that I haven't possibly been able to find anywhere else?
Absolutely. I'm sorry, but yeah, our primal needs, money is a conduit. It's not money we love. It's what money does for us, but our
Mhm.
primal needs we need. So that is
Yeah.
beyond money. How would you define sexual wellness? Like the
Okay.
overall picture?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, sexual wellness is how well adjusted you are with your sexuality. And again, like I said, sexuality encompasses everything who we are, our experiences, our fantasies, our wants, our needs, our desires, our, fertility, infertility, our our gender expression, our everything about how we present ourselves in the world. And if any part of how we present ourselves is not in truth, I would say sexual wellness, we have to question how well our sexual wellness is. because it's not very well if I can't be honest about my wants, needs, desires, likes, what I'm into, what I'm not into, what I am okay with you knowing about me. We will have to evaluate that. So that's how I see it.
What would you say is the number one block to sexual wellness in people?
Fear. Fear. The fear of judgment, the fear of being shamed, the fear of being wronged, the fear that people won't understand, the internal fear that I have about, oh my gosh, I'm into this. What does this mean for me? I think fear is the number one barrier.
Wow. It's so interesting how we as human beings are so capable of judging ourselves. You know what I mean?
We are
Like,
our biggest critics.
like, yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, it's really sad. I am so full when I see patients that are able to come in holding on to so much fear and be able to do the work and do what needs to be done in order for them to shed that. And it's almost like you see the life come back through their eyes. It's almost as if they were living on autopilot or default. But when I am able to have open, honest conversations about the things I am fearful of, or explore different parts of me that I left abandoned, it's like, wow, yeah, it took work for me to get here. But now that it's here, I'm going to do everything I need to do to hold on to it.
If there was one message that you could give everyone in the world about human sexuality that you don't think the world gets yet, what would that message be?
Everybody's sexuality is different. Sexuality looks different for everyone. No two people have the exact same matching experience with sexuality. And I'm not talking about sexual orientation, because too often people get sexuality and sexual orientation confused. Sexuality is personal. You govern and dictate how you show up in the world. And so before we judge others for how they show up in their sexuality, we need to take a look at ourselves to make sure that we are walking and living in our own truths.
You mean people need to stop peeking in other people's blinds?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I mean, I know you might be a voyeur. I know you might want to watch other people, but you know, look at yourself before you try to judge or pass judgment or shame someone for what they might be into or their past experiences. Do your own work to make sure you're very clear and very confident in how you show up in the world. When you have a strong social connection or even just a strong connection with someone, you have to look at the health outcomes. Having a strong connection is normally linked to better health outcomes. So, physical health outcomes. And so, I might, like you said, I get a text from my girlfriend and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm feeling better. And so when we have consistent human connection and interaction, we tend to have lower rates of chronic illness. Or if we're sick, we recover quicker, you know? And so we can't negate the importance of that human connection and interaction.
I want to ask you, there are some people who would say, well, you know what? Something like camming is not good for people because there is and this is actually a real conversation I had with someone.
Okay.
um, this is a real conversation that happened earlier today, actually. But they would say, camming is actually not the greatest for people because the people that are using camming are a very sensitive almost volatile demographic. And so they're more likely to develop addictions to camming. And so it's just all bad.
So I would say we have to look at the rates of how many people cam versus the negative outcomes and how many people have negative interactions with camming. That's almost like saying alcohol. Okay, that's legal, but there are some people who become chemically addicted to alcohol, right? Do we ban and make alcohol illegal? No, we do not. We just, different people, they know their limits, they know their boundaries. And so I think that's another part about knowing yourself. I don't think anything is all bad or all good. There's risk associated with anything. And so to make a blanket general statement that camming is going to make people addicted or it has negative outcomes and consequences, that's a little out there. But I would say for everyone to understand their own limits. Am I starting to ditch work to have cam sessions? Am I starting to, is it impacting my life? Is it having negative impacts with how I live my daily life? That's when you start worrying. But a lot of the good that can come from these camming sessions, for example, people with social anxiety or just anxiety, period. I'm not even focused on my anxiety because I'm focused on having this conversation with this model, right? So that's something that's positive when we're talking about healthy coping strategies. And it's an alternative outlet for stress. So I think that's something that we need to be mindful of. Also, making connections where I can't make connections. Maybe I've always felt socially awkward my entire life, and the only place where I can feel accepted is with this model who I'm camming with. I would say instead of someone feeling like their life is worthless, they're getting some type of interaction. I would say that's more good than harm. So I think with everything in life, there's a risk factor associated with it. And so we can't paint this broad brush stroke and say throw it all away, it's all bad, because a particular set of people become obsessed and compulsive with doing it. That, I don't think that's fair
Yeah,
to
throw
paint.
that baby out with the bathwater type of thing.
Yeah, wait, no.
That was kind of my thought on it that I wanted to ask you is for people who may not have the option to have daily connection in their lives, while yeah, the risk is there and it's true, these are not in-person relationships,
Right.
is that even if that was a brief moment of that serotonin, dopamine, and just feeling connected to another human being, my thought is that in some cases, that moment of connection, the feel good hormones that, like you said, we can't just snap our fingers and get them. There's only
Mm-hmm.
certain ways that we can make them come on like that. While that would be nice, it's just not how we are. And so my thought is that even that brief moment of getting those needs met, there's benefit to that. There's psychological benefit to that. And like you said, we can't just throw everything away because of
Mm-hmm.
the fact that there are risk factors.
If you are an informed consumer and you are making an informed decision to partake in camming and you know the risk, you're informed, you understand what this means, you understand that these are not people who you're going to meet in real life and have a long lasting relationship. It's fantasy, but fantasy can fulfill a need. Then I think it's safe. I think it has its place. I think that it does what it needs to do. So those are just my thoughts. I have actually talked about, like Jasmin, with some of my patients. So whether they went on or not, I'm not sure, but I like to be a source of resources, things that are out there, options that they have, and say, hey, this is something you might be into, just like with FitLife. I mean, these are things to help you become a little bit more comfortable with seeing body parts, with having discussions, and possibly subscribing to individuals. And if that's what they're asking, I'm going to give them the information.
I love that. Absolutely. Yeah. Like you, and it's interesting because I've had members who have told me they couldn't even approach a woman at a bar because they were too shy for that and just didn't have the
Mhm.
confidence for it.
Yep.
But after having so many positive experiences with a model, he said that he felt like he was, he had the confidence to approach a woman at a bar because it's like, wow, I've had a positive experience with this beautiful woman. A lot of them, just look like goddesses. And it
Hmm.
really boosted his confidence in himself to where now he can ask for someone's phone number and it doesn't have to be them approaching him.
Sometimes, even in relationships, when the other partner finds out that you might be on these sites, it creates a dialogue that maybe was not there before. And what some of the partners get past the shock, or, oh my God, you betrayed me, you're cheating on me, or whatever it is that they may come up with, it's almost as if the other person who's engaging in the camming sessions are able to speak freely about what they actually get from these sessions. And if the uninvolved partner is able to hear the needs that are being met by the camming session, it's possible to get that unfulfilled need now met within the relationship dynamic.
Yeah, really beautifully said.
So, I mean, it's not for everybody, but for people who are open, and I will tell you, there are some people that are like, I am never telling my partner this. Like, no, I am never saying that I am on this site. Okay.
Right.
And then we talk about, why do you hide it? Why do you feel like you can't share that this is an area or an interest of yours with your partner?
Hmm.
And that's again where we talk about that fear and that shame and that unacceptance, and being able to be comfortable with who they are. If you have to hide parts of yourself, I don't know if that's healthy sexuality. You're hiding. You can't be free. You can't be honest about what you're into and what you enjoy.
Beautiful. One of the things that you do, and in some ways you've done it in this interview, is that you give people permission to be who they are sexually, which
Yep,
is really important.
absolutely. Because there are so many individuals who still don't have permission. And it's not because no one hasn't given it to them, they haven't given it to themselves. I haven't been able to give myself permission to be free because I'm still in the bondage of judgment and unacceptance and shame and darkness. But once you unlock the chains and you shed the shame, all the things that you want can continue to flourish in light and not in darkness.
I love that. Unlock the chains and
And shed the shame.
shed
Unlock the chains and shed the shame.
that. I
Yes,
love it. Thank you so much. This has been an incredible interview.
absolutely.
I could just feel that you're doing what, you're meant to do and probably helping so many people. My final question for you is, how do we move forward collectively in creating a more sex positive society?
Do we have another hour? um, so that is a very multi-layered answer, right? You have the religious aspect, you have the integrity aspect, you have the morale police aspect. There's so many different layers to being able to get to a sex positive movement. I think we have to really start with the children, because children are going to grow up to be adults. If we don't start sharing this information with them until they're adults, the adults that were sex negative in their lives have already begun to plant seeds. So if we can start with the children and help them to know that sex positive doesn't mean, yes, go have sex with everybody. No, it just means that, is there consent? Are you informed? Are you aware of what this means? Can you make decisions? Is this safe? Is this not safe? Being able to go into sexual experiences confidently, being able to be confident about body positivity and how you view yourself, being confident about having open conversations about sexual health and sexual wellness, knowing how our anatomical parts and our sexual anatomy works, knowing who we are, how we express our gender, how we express who we are as individuals. If we can implement that into children, they will be more accepting and less shaming. So if I am growing up and I am now open minded and I have a partner who is coming to me with something that they might be into, I'm going to be less likely to yup their yum than I am if I'm just like, oh my God, that's crazy. That's weird. That's bad. And it's like, okay, let me go back into my dark cave. So if we can start instilling sex positivity in children, I think that eventually, as the generations roll by, our view on what we are comfortable with openly talking about will shift.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.